All right, so I'd like to discuss some of the alternative architectures that we might consider. Just go over some of the ones that are most common out there, and then we'll settle on basically what we have for the particular infrastructure for the assignment that's going to go out. It's going to ask you to install using an AWS account. It's going to be Java based and whatnot, but nevertheless. That's just one of the many architectures that are available. But we settle on that one, and I just want to see where does that fall in compare against other architectures that you might be familiar with. So basically, the intent is that we're going to be using a third-party API that lives on the cloud. It's something that looks like IMDb, and we want to be able to query it. With some search criteria, perhaps a movie of the title of a movie, or maybe an actor or some genre or some year, whatever query, and that query will typically be through some HTTP request that goes out to some URL and provides a query parameter as in title equal Batman or something, right? And there's plenty of these services out there. Some of them are for pay, some of them are free, and typically they return a common format for all these APIs that are out there is to return them as a JSON format. Okay, it'll be some array of JSON objects. Okay, each JSON object will have all sorts of information in there: the title, the genre, the director, the plot, links to poster, the list of the actors, a whole bunch of stuff. Will be also some ratings from Rotten Tomatoes and whatnot, and so we can control what we want by giving the title or some query that will come back with data. So we would like to be able to interface with that API. So there are several alternatives that we can do that. We can certainly write a Java piece of code, some Java class that taking some arguments, it can generate an HTTP request and go out and fetch that. Okay, that's certainly doable just with a couple of lines of code. It's pretty simple. And the only perhaps thing that might be challenging here is that this is Java world, right? And we talk Java instances, Java object instances, whereas this is just a plain old string, right? So somehow we would need to find out how this is that we map arrays of strings of objects and whatnot, convert them from that particular format into some Java instances, right? So ideally, this would become some Java array with Java objects instantiated in there, right? At some point. So we'll need to cover that. We'll talk on how to do that. Yes.
Are we doing live API for when people are accessing, or are we going to download this all to a database?
No, it'll be live. Yep. The other alternative. So this is running on your desktop, running on some JVM. Okay, running on your local operating system. The other alternative that might be a little bit simpler, again, as an alternative to this, is that you can do this from the browser instead, where you have instead running JavaScript. Okay, you would have some JavaScript instance running on your browser. As the user interacts with the browser, perhaps types the title of the movie. JavaScript can then make the request out to the cloud, right, and come back. And then this array over here, this array of objects would come as a JavaScript JSON object, and it's perfect. It's in the format that we would know how to parse right here in JavaScript. It's already in an appropriate format. So this is an alternative. The only challenge here is that typically browsers are not allowed to make cross-domain requests. Typically this page will be written by you, right? It's your code. Typically, it will be hosted on your AWS server, right? So it'll download from your AWS server, runs on a browser. So the domain that it was downloaded from is your AWS machine, yes? and you're asking that JavaScript file code to make a HTTP request to a different domain. Okay, and that typically is considered a security issue, right? It's considered to be a cross-domain request. Now, this has been an issue for several years from the beginning when JavaScript first came out, but lately, during the last decade or so, we've seen that the discussion has moved away at being so paranoid at having JavaScript make cross-domain requests. Instead, today what we have is that let the server decide. Let the server decide whether it's okay if the cross-domain request is a security issue, right? So today what we have is that there's other technologies where what the browser will do is says, "Ooh, I see that you're trying to do a cross-domain request. Yes. Instead of just blocking you blatantly, let me ask the server first. Let me ask IMDb. IMDb, is it okay that this JavaScript source that was downloaded from this other domain is actually communicating with you? Is it okay?" And then IMDb will respond saying, "Yes, it's okay. Right? I only accept GET requests or POST requests or whatever, right?" And then the browser will say, "Oh, okay, JavaScript, go ahead. The server says it's okay, all right?" And then this will work. This will work and come back with data. For that to work, these servers need to support a technology called CORS. I think it's Cross Origin Request, something, I forget what it stands for. But it's a technology that supports this new protocol, right, of checking to see if it's okay, right? Almost all newer services, certainly Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Best Buy, Yelp, most of all the new services that are out there support CORS and allow you to do these kinds of queries from your client. Yes? Okay. So that's only an alternative. If this doesn't support it, typically we would have to instead go this route, okay, from the Java, and then have to deal with the issue of how do we map some strings, JSON strings to Java objects. Okay. So the architecture might look something like this. You have a Java server. Typically it will be Tomcat. Okay? You will have certain HTML files, HTML/JavaScript files that will be downloaded, right? As the user navigates to your site, right? This will be downloaded to the browser. It will be copied on the browser's machine. It will run on the browser's machine, and then you're interacting with this piece of information over here with this application. And then you're either sending the requests back to your server if it doesn't support CORS, or the request will go directly to the CORS website. Okay, and then here you would display the movies, the posters, the various information here. Okay? Once you receive it, and once you have the data from the cloud, and you start liking things or not liking things or interacting with the data, right? Or follow or doing whatever you're interacting with this, all that information needs to be stored somewhere, right? The only place we can store it is in a database that we own, right? There's no other place to put it. So part of this will be that we'll need to go back to the server and say, hey, so and so likes this movie. Right? We'll need to send and generate a GET request or POST request. Typically, when we're generating new data, we would be using HTTP POST. So we would be posting information such as, so and so likes Batman, right, or Avatar, or whatever, right? The JVM would be listening in for these incoming requests. It would execute a certain function, and that function would then insert that information into a database, right? Where the database you might have multiple tables, right? Some tables representing users, some tables representing movies, some tables representing reviews, some tables representing the fact that somebody's following somebody else, that somebody hates this movie or likes that other movie, right? And so this part, we're going to be spending about a week or so doing data modeling using UML. Yes, UML is going to allow us to capture what tables do we need. Right? What are the properties? What are the data types? What are the relationships between these? Right? We're also going to introduce several other diagrams, UML diagrams, that will capture the sequence of notifications and messages that are going to go around between the various systems. We have a browser system over here. We have the middle tier. We have a database here, a data layer. We have a web service layer over here that we're interacting with. So what we're going to introduce when we talk about UML, we'll introduce how do we encode that, right? We'll talk about having the users generating events to the browser talking to the cloud responding with data, us selecting a particular movie, going back to the middle tier, going back to the data layer, storing in the database, and then coming back with a response. So we're going to be talking about capturing and documenting all these things so that developers can then go off and actually start building this. Yes. So when we talk about design, we'll spend some time on the various ways that we can capture this. I'm pretty sure you've already seen class diagrams, inheritance, and all that. In where did you see that? In I'm sorry. OD. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So I'm sure you've seen some of that. So probably we'll go over that fairly quick. We'll talk about more other types of diagrams and how to document data flow and whatnot. Okay. All right. So this is pretty much the architecture we'll be following. There will be a piece of software that's going to be running on the browser. There's going to be a piece of middle tier that's going to be running on the server, and there's going to be a data layer that is going to be storing the data to a database and accessing. There's some best practices that we're going to be implementing. For instance, it is typically a best practice to encapsulate and modularize any access to the data layer, right? So there'll be a set of classes that only do that, right? They instead of spreading out SQL access, SQL data access across your entire source code, instead we encapsulate, we modularize so that we can reuse that access to a database. Also, other data patterns is design patterns is exposing the relationship between all this data model, right? That there'll be several one-to-ones, one-to-manys, many-to-manys, right? That is going to drive how we expose these, what the syntax of these URLs should look like, right? Instead of these being just arbitrary URLs, they should follow, a fairly well defined syntax based on the data model that you are exposing. So we'll talk about that quite a bit, and by the end of the assignment that walks you through installing your infrastructure, you should be able to start doing really trivial data accesses, right? So for instance, there'll be a hello world example, right? That I'm retrieving Java data from the server, some really trivial HTML. This first assignment, just to get you going, okay? But as we progress, we'll keep giving you more and more of the technology stack that you'll need. I'm pretty open on what you want to use here. In my web development course, we cover Angular and its various incarnations. The very latest version of Angular. Certainly, you can use jQuery. We can also accept you maybe using something like React. Right now it's really bleeding edge, and folks are really liking using React. So certainly we can support any technology that you might feel comfortable on this end, right? The simplest is jQuery, right? The next that adds another layer of abstraction might be Angular, or React. One of those two would be also acceptable. Okay? Make sense? Okay, so this is more or less the architecture that, and for the following assignment, you're going to implement a hello world version of this end, right? And then the upcoming assignments will add additional examples of what you might do on one of these stacks over here. Okay? All right.